All right, everyone, welcome back to another great episode of Basscast Radio. I am your host, Brian Carter. And guys, with us as always, man, Hank the Bass Geek. If you guys are watching up in YouTube, he's the one beside me to my right. And then below me, guys, is Thomas with Fishing the DMV. And guys, we do have a special guest tonight. We got Mark, man, with Bass Angler Magazine. I know I've had him on before, so hopefully you guys have listened to that episode. We had him on before earlier, and we were talking about the trail, and the trail had not kicked off yet, but now it's kicked off, and we're in gear. And what are we about 3 events in, Mark?
I've had like 7 or 8 events.
But
Yeah.
you've
So
had,
we've
but I
had a
mean, I'm
lot.
talking about your pro series. You've had, I think, about
The
three
pro,
events,
we've had three. Yes. One more
right?
to go.
So the pro series, then there's the kayak series, and then there's what's the other
The
series? The
Pro-Am
lower,
series.
what's it called?
Pro-Am.
The Pro Am series. So the dude picked up, grabbed the Wild Wild West by the horns, and he is running with it. And so far, so good on that. But before we get started, like we always do, we'll go around the room, see what's been happening. And Geek, man, because I know we all know that Thomas threw out some stuff last night, as always, after his big freaking meeting. And that, whew, I got something to drop on that part as well. But Geek, what's happening, brother?
Man, just banging and slanging. You know how it is. Getting out there, making content, throwing those videos out. Like I said, we are in week 5 of the 5 videos a week uh, tour, and it's going well, going very well, actually.
How do you see your numbers have increased with the five? Can you give us just an
Uh,
idea?
I haven't sat down and really crunched it, but I would say we're probably in that neighborhood of about 18% increase the first full 28 days, the first full month.
Right.
So far, it's looking like July, which tends to be one of the worst months,
Mm-hmm.
is going to be one of the best months because we've been doing it, a full July at this point.
Right. So, guys, this is why I kind of asked Geek that question. When you talk about making videos, and it's the same thing with Thomas. I mean, Thomas knocks it out of the ballpark. I only do one episode a week because we have the website, our newsletter, etc. But people's like, I can only do, I could do one or two. You cannot make it doing one or two. I mean, you're gonna have to. We're in a, maybe what is it? I think 2020, 2000 is right around 2000. I think YouTube came out. Maybe for the first 5 years of YouTube, you could have gotten away with doing just a couple of videos a week. But now there's so much content on YouTube, and every day, I mean, I'm on YouTube a lot. The kids here are on YouTube a lot. We don't even watch TV; it's all YouTube. But you got to put out content, and you got to bust it, just like Thomas below us is busting it right there. Thomas, what you put out 4 podcasts a week, or is
I
it
used to
5?
put out 5, and even YouTube said like you got to stop. So I've cut it back to like 3 to 4 per week. Our live show to really recap what's happening around Virginia and Maryland. If people don't know, I'm on the Black Bass Advisory Freshwater Board for Maryland. So we help make laws for the Potomac River, which is where the BPT is going next year as well, as long as Smith Mountain Lake. So that's always rowdy to see how government works, and it makes me even more of a libertarian every meeting I go to.
Amen.
Amen. Danielle's a libertarian, by the way. So yes, I definitely understand that. Uh, Last night you broke some stuff on us, Thomas, about some of the stuff you guys were talking about doing, some changes, increases. I don't know, Mark, if you have that out there in California or not, but here in Virginia and Maryland, they're starting to introduce a lot of new price increases for tournament trails and tournament events. So go ahead and tell us what you had.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have fees here. California puts out a fee for every event. And then if you go to a USDA lake, they charge you for the event and then how many people you have.
Wow.
If you fly a drone or take pictures, they charge you for that. State lake will charge you for whatever, they deem necessary. Everyone has their own challenges and their own,
Yeah.
their own fees. If you go to Arizona, if it's not a USDA or a state-owned lake, there's no fee. You just show up and have a tournament. So it's different. You go to Oregon, and then you have to get 2 references before you
Oh,
have a tournament.
wow.
Yeah, and then you have to have the tournament, and then have different licenses depending on what body of water you're on. So each one has its own challenges. Right now I'm working on my 2025 schedule. Trying to work out all of those challenges because there's private-owned lakes, there's government-owned lakes, U.S. state, and then there's county-owned. It's it's a challenge to figure out what each one is and what they actually want you to do for each different thing, each different lake.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I've been thinking about before this episode to really kind of figure out how to stage this question. But when you look at the top 10 lakes all over the world, west of the Mississippi always has a couple. And there are a couple of lakes that we won't be giving away the information on in the Ohio or Idaho region that are giving up monster smallmouth. And I really thought about this, and I want to pose this to you. Do you have a better chance of catching a fish of a lifetime out near you or back here on the East Coast? Because personally, I think you guys, that's where you want to go to try to catch that fish of a lifetime.
I think the West Coast probably has, what it's Florida, Texas, or California. Texas has a lot of giant fish, and so does Florida. Texas has that new lunker program where, they have a lot of fish over 12, 15 pounds. California, the Delta has, there's a good number of 10 pounders. Clear Lake has a good number of 10 pounders. We have some lakes down in Southern California, but they're pretty crowded lakes. There's some giant bass in them, but most of the lakes are pretty crowded where you're not going to go down there and probably catch a 12 pounder on any given day. So yeah, a better chance of, California, Texas, and Florida. Those 3 states probably have the best chance of catching your PB.
We were blessed. It was like, I think at one time, Texas was our #1 state. Like, people just want to know what was happening in Virginia because they do catch giant freaking bass. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, and then just to add to that, because like in the 90s, you had the big, the Florida stocking program out in California, and that got stopped. But then you still have the kokanee salmon in certain areas because of, Gavin's trying to do his best. Hopefully, I'm not going to get you demonetized here, but doing his best to really hurt a bunch of those things. How has the fishing been in recent years with in certain areas, the lack of stocking, so to speak? Have they still been able to be solid, generally speaking? And is that something that really could be a benefit to kind of bring back to some of those areas?
If they stock kokanee, like, Berryessa, they stock kokanee, and, and that other lake escapes me, the one with the giant spots. But they were stocking kokanee in there, and the spots get really big. They get to about 3 pounds naturally, and then they start eating kokanee, and they get up to 8, 10, 11 pounds. That's where the world record came from. Berryessa is the same way. I think they've slowed down on some of the stocking programs for the trout. Some places still stock them. Bass stocking, not too much. Florida or Clear Lake is really a great fishery right now. It's fishing really good. Delta's fishing okay. We have seals that come into the Delta, and they're eating a lot of our bass. They used to only come in and eat striper and salmon, and now the seals have gotten smart. They know how to get up under the mats and get through the tulies.
That would be a hell of a thing to catch on a topwater frog.
Yeah, no joke.
The seals are horrible. I mean, I wish they would go away, or they'd have some sort of program to get rid of those. We just got back from Oregon, Columbia River, and I'm going to tell you that is an amazing fishery that gets no press. So we do, in our pro series, we do 2 different formats, right? To make it to the top 10, we have weight and also keeper count. Keepers have to be 14 inches or above, and we had well over 30 guys, well over 1,000 fish caught that were over 15 inches in 2 days by 30 anglers.
For the people that aren't familiar with the Columbian watershed, are you talking about a tidal basin like we're used to with the Potomac River, or is this just a river?
No. This is up into Boardman. We went out of Boardman, Oregon, So it's up Umatilla pool.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of the pools are really good. There's the next pool down, I don't remember, Aragon pool, I think.
Mm.
And, so all of the pools actually are really good, right? From Boardman and the pool above and the pool below, all are fishing really, really good. If you want to go catch nice smallmouth, August, September is really a good time. Early springtime, you can catch big ones, big bags. There was like 25, 26 pound bags of smallmouth coming in quite
So it's
often.
kind of like upper Mississippi, the pools,
Yes,
upper Mississippi. Okay.
like in the La Crosse area, up in
Okay.
up in New York, where they get those big giant smallmouth, and guys are catching 20 to 40 fish a day and a lot of 3 and 4 pounders. So that's the way it is on the Columbia, which is really, really a fun fishery. We've been there twice this year.
That is really, to me, I do have some friends that live out west in Montana, and they talk about how that is the next frontier that no one talks about yet. Eventually, it'll be bust open where you have the Dakotas, Montana, Idaho, Oregon. There are some smallmouth in there. It won't be known yet. Eventually, it'll blow open just like Mille Lacs did when Bass went there.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
insane that there's still a part of this country that has untapped fishing like that. It's just crazy in 2024.
Yeah, and then we're going to work on having a van up in Washington or Idaho, and there's Coeur d'Alene and Potholes and several other CJ Strike, other reservoirs up there that fish really, really good. So I'm excited to go up there. We have Trinity out here, which is kind of an out of the way reservoir, but there's a number that has northern strain. Really, I don't think there's any Florida strain in there, but you can go there and catch a 5 pound smallie and a 7 or 8 pound largemouth. I went there last year, right after ICAST. Hot, flat, calm day, during the middle of summer. And I think we caught like a 22, 23 pound bag, just out having a good time. Haven't been there in months. So one of those lakes, we have some really good lakes up here that are pretty easy to catch some fish.
And you also manufacture elite anglers because you always hear of the West guys coming east, and maybe I'm not aware of it, but you don't hear about the East guys going west. It's you guys create some of those anglers. The Brent Ehlers just named the Heights. It's insane, that caliber of angler. Is it because you're so close to closer to the Japanese culture that all those new techniques come over there first? Like, what makes it to where it breeds so many good anglers?
We say that a lot. A lot of the new techniques come out of the West, or they come out of Japan and then come to California and then spread east. But you guys, the bass fishing is so prolific out on the East Coast that a lot of our anglers will come out, will, kind of start here and then move east. But there's not as many tournaments, not as much going on the West Coast as there is on the East. You have Bassmaster MLF out there, and they do a really good job. They come out west and they don't draw very many boats. So the per capita bass fisherman here on the West is relatively small. So, with my circuit, I'm really working at doing some different things and trying to build bass fishing on the West Coast. We have a new series called the Super 60, which is our pro tour reformatted, where we take 60 guys and with a $2,500 entry fee, and we pay back 50 grand for first place. Wow. And 20th place gets 3 grand. So we pay a third of the field. First place gets 50 grand, televised event. We give more media than all the other circuits on the West Coast combined. So we give the guys the media. We got the great payback. We have TV. So we're working to build bass fishing on the West Coast. Will we get as many anglers on as they do on the East? No, it's a different mentality. It's like you guys in your college football. College football game's on and everybody in town goes to that game. I mean, they close the streets down, everybody's going to the game. Yeah. Everybody knows who's on what team. Here on the West Coast, it's college football. Like, oh yeah, the USC has a team and so-and-so has a team, but it's really not big. And just like bass fishing is big back there, it's more of a choice. For out here, it's a choice. For there, it's something that you just do. We go bass fishing. There's a tournament coming on every Wednesday night. There's a tournament, and there's 50 to 100 boats there. Right
Yep,
here,
that's how it is.
Wednesday nighter, and there's 15 to maybe 30 boats. So it's like that. You guys have a bigger populace of bass fishing anglers. Kind of just different mentality. And it's way more expensive to live out here. So a lot of the guys are just working to make their house payment and survive. And then they go fishing. Oh man, I can't afford to go fishing this week. I made my house payment. So back there, it's like, what? Screw it. I'll make my house payment later. I'm going fishing.
Mark, you just got back from ICAST, man, like about a week ago, and you're the only one out of the whole entire group that went. Plus, for you guys who don't know, Mark owns Bass Angler Magazine, and a great media company with a great magazine that you can find at Barnes and Noble. That's where I get my copy, but you can find it at almost any newsstand. But what was some of your big takeaways from ICAST 2024?
There was a lot of new baits there, but the baits were like new and improved versions of baits that were already out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that way every year. There's I'm trying to think of it. Can't really think of a standout bait that I went, oh my God, that's so cool. They had new BFS reels and rods working for lighter lures. They had some small lures there. They had some new jointed swim baits that were at a lower, like Fish Lab has that new BBZ jointed swim bait.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be like $19, and it swims really good. We tried it out in the water. It swims really nice. And most jointed swim baits are $50 or $75.
Yeah.
But these ones have got a nice paint job and it swims good. It's $20. So it's one that, you can afford to throw it up in the bushes. And if you lose it, it's not great losing $20, but it won't kill you. So
wow.
Yeah, if you throw you throw your depth swim bait, jointed swim bait in there, that's $200, you're going to go swimming in that tree to get it out. The Fish Lab one, you probably just break it off and go on down the bank.
So I'm going to ask you about the dirty question in bass fishing right now. Where I live at, I'm Highlands Reservoir, Appalachian Mountains, everything's 2,000 foot deep here and ultra clear. So the guys around here, they've been scoping for, since it was Panoptics, right? Everybody around here loves it. But you've got a diverse fishery there, from the shallower delta to some really highlands, mountain lakes. So what's your trail doing? Is it no live scope? Is it permitted here and there? So and what's the feedback on the West Coast?
We don't have any restrictions on that. I get guys come up to me every tournament. That damn live scope, like that, cheating that. It shouldn't be, I had live scopes since it first came out, that big giant brick that Garmin had on the front.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's pretty cool. I'm 66 years old, and I learned how to use it. And these other old guys, it's basically a tool. If you say, hey, well, you can't have live scope. Well, what about your cell phone with Siri and directions? And well, wait a minute. Okay, let's get rid of our cell phones and go back to paper maps and figure out how to get there. I realize there's different people have different opinions. And live scope does not catch the fish for you. It shows you the fish, but it will not catch it. Can't put it on your boat and learn how to know where a fish are and then go catch that fish. You're going to have to figure out, there's some really specific baits that you have to use to catch these fish. You use a little ball head and a fluke style bait, which works really good. But, do you use a heavy one? Do you use a light one? Do you throw it right on them? It's
there's definitely a science to it. And, I got a video that I did just a couple weeks back where I was out fishing, and it was a school of 50 to 100 bass, and I tell people all the time, if it was really like spotlighting, I'd have been 100% kill rate. I'd have had 100 in the boat, but I caught three,
Yeah.
three out. And I consider myself pretty good with the old scope. I wear the scoper badge proud.
Yeah, we use it. We don't have any restrictions in our tour with it. Some guys use it, some guys don't. Like Colby Pearson won two of our events, and he's really, really good with the live scope. Well, at Boardman, the last day it blew like 15 miles an hour, so it's really hard to use that on a river system when it's blowing. And I saw him fishing the bank, and I'm like, "Damn, you're like the rest of us now, just going down the bank."
That's funny.
But there's a lot of times like the California Delta is pretty weedy. And you get into the grass, and I mean, your live scope, we really, really don't use it. Clear Lake has a lot of grass, but there's also fish offshore at Clear Lake. And that's something that live scope will teach you, that there's fish out off the bank. I remember, I cast a few checks when live scope first came out, that I'd be going down the bank and I'd swing it out and I'd look and there'd be a fish in 20 foot over 100. I'd be like, wow, what if that's a bass? And I'd throw me a wacky Cinco over there and it'd start swimming off. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was a bass. And it's something that you would never fish for unless you knew that the fish was there. So it can open your eyes to a new way of fishing and let these fish are in different places doing different things than, they're not only on the bank where, and before live scope, you thought every fish was on the bank or on a rock pile out deep. You didn't realize that they were out suspended, like those big giant ones are out there suspended chasing bait.
Go ahead, Thomas.
So.
And thank you so much for teaming me up there with that. I had episode 255. Really, we need to have more people listen to that. I had on Jake Norman of the Texas Department of Wildlife Resources, who runs Lake Fork and Toledo Bend. And he did a 2-year study on forward-facing sonar where he would interview everybody, their catch rate, did they have forward-facing sonar. They also put cameras down in the water and actually used it with forward-facing sonar to capture them. There was no statistical significance of your catch rate. And he said over 55% of the people that he interviewed over 2 years didn't even have it. And with that said, so it's pretty close to even, you didn't see a massive jump in your fish catching abilities. However, as he stated in the show, you could see, though, that this would also be adjusted for the 1%ers. It's the same thing. If you give steroids to me, I probably would have a stroke. If you give it to Barry Bonds, he's going to hit 400 home runs. So in that sense, yes. But this idea, because of the hyperbolic nature of social media, if your grandpa puts it on his boat, it does not mean he catches 30 pounds. And it is statistically proven that's the case. And I think this is interesting because you have all these tournaments that are like, well, what should we do with it? This tournament in the fall that we talked about on the show about a month ago, if it's a gangbuster and everyone's there, great. But if no one shows up, like the Lake Lanier tournament, I think we need to, as the fishing community, look back and maybe this is just social media that's stoking this fire and it's not real. Time will tell, but the facts so far data-wise is this is not the end of fishing because of this technology.
Right. It's it's another piece of equipment that we use to catch them. I understand, I have non-boaters that get frustrated if guys are out scoping way out in 100 foot of water, scoping fish that are 20 or 30 feet down, and they're in the back of the boat without the ability to see those fish, and they're fishing blind. I can see that, that can be frustrating.
But we have the new setup coming from Lowrance. And, it's supposed to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
The screen is smaller though, but I mean, you're going to have more technology in the new setup. So, I mean, it's just like any electronics. I mean, dang, the VCR, the VCR, when the VCR came out, is $500 for VCR. And before they died and went away, they were like $25 to $50. So, I mean, it's all going to come down and change. And it's all based, like you were saying, Mark, it's all based on the angler. If he's willing to change and make this swap.
And I had this come up on my show 2 weeks ago for a call-in show about live scope being the death of the co-angler. And I had a couple of co-anglers calling. It's like, well, two things that are hurting us more than that is, one, there's more tours that they don't have co-anglers because boaters don't want them. And second, kayaking. I have a guy that lives outside of DC, and he's like, I can't park my Skeeter in the place I'm living, but I can buy a kayak, pay a $50 entry fee, and I could win $2,000. It makes more sense. So I think there's more variables than just forward-facing sonar that's bleeding out a lot of like the BFL style leagues.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I've said it. I have said it and said it and said it. I grew up. I fished the Tennessee River. I've ledge fished. I remember when side imaging became a thing. I remember when down imaging became a thing. I've been Demiki rigging on South Holston Reservoir since forever, when it was not a thing to anybody else but us. And to me, all those bites end up going away to a certain extent. I always say, and since you've had it for so long, I know I've had it for so long, I kind of equate it to, the A-rig that, yeah, man, it was great at first, but now every fish has seen 20 of them and you're not catching 5 at a time like we used to. And, the jig, everybody wants to talk about the jig head minnow. I can tell you from from the lakes that I fish, that bite is not what it was last year and definitely not what it was 3 years ago.
Right.
So, but what's your experience with that?
I found the same thing. I remember first time I went to the Delta and threw a chatterbait, I caught a 10, 2 5s, and one about 12.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And then the first ML, it was FLW. Then I remember I fished a tournament. I just missed the top 10, but I lost 2 7-pounders on that chatterbait.
Wow.
And now, I mean, you could still catch them on a chatterbait, but it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like the A-rigs the same way.
Yeah.
And Geek, I like what you said there, because I've had the same conversations where I think it is very lake dependent. For example, is the drop shot and the shaky head. Most places they've seen it 1,000 times. On the tidal Potomac, the Rappahannock, the James, that's like brand new. They've never seen it, because why would you throw finesse on a tidal river? That's crazy. And it's so weird how it is very specific to the regions, and just thinking outside the box just a little bit can pay off big.
I mean, all these baits are going through cycles. I mean, and that's really what it is right there. And, there was a lot of heads come out of ICAST, and, there were a lot of little swim baits we saw. And I mean, every company is making one now. I mean, if you're not making one, I mean, it is what it is. But
I think we've got such a spotlight on it with the 1%, the pros, the guys that are great, because these fish have never been fished for. I've got 2 lakes, one which I've fished for them forever, and one which I haven't. And it is a contrast, a night and day difference in what those fish have seen and what they haven't. I think after a while, you'll start to see that begin to balance out, especially as more people adopt the technology and more people begin to go out there and have a good time putting some bass in the boat.
Yeah. And when you're speaking to ICAST, it's interesting. If you guys go check out the channel, I sent a team down there. We live streamed about 6 hours of it. And 2 things came to mind is forward-facing sonar and playing it safe from a company standpoint. One joke, a friend of mine that went down there for me, he said, it's like everyone waits to see what Japan does, and then we just copy that out. Like, that's the thing, because no one wants to make a risk or a gamble, because that's money. It could not pan out. And that's interesting where you see that now. It's like, okay, the hype is forward-facing sonar. Let's do the minnows. Last year, there's some glide baits. It used to be ducks and bats, which was really stupid, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird hype machine, and it's sad. And that's the biggest thing I thought about it. It's just sad and dull. It's not the creative ingenuity that I want to see from companies that used to be very creative and, have cool ideas.
Well, I think a lot of that, though, is because they're focused on the pros. And a lot of the pros, we're seeing it, have kind of been slow to adopt this technology. Now, take Mark, for example. Now, I'd like to sit down and talk with him and say, hey, man, what's the tweaks you guys are doing now? You've had it for, how long has it been, Mark? How long have you had Live Scope at this point?
When did it come out? 6 years ago?
6 years ago, I think. Yeah. So now my question is, Mark is seeing these fish react differently. I guarantee he's got tricks that he knows that a lot of the pros don't know, and let a lot of the guys, don't understand about the way the fish react, where you're modifying
Mm-hmm.
baits or this,
Yeah.
that, or the other, or have ideals. And that's where we're going to see. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting because I've already got and I've only been doing it for about 3-4 years.
Mark mentioned something earlier that's important too about like, well, if we go to the title and we go to a grass fishery, it doesn't play as much. If you're a bass and you go to Lake Fork or you go to Toledo Bend in February and people are complaining about what did you think would happen? If you go to Lake Erie and it's like people are using forward facing centers, like you shocked about that one?
Yeah.
You got to create a schedule that is balanced, that gives each person a chance to show off their skill set. If you lean it hard where Kevin goes to every single ledge in Kentucky and all those lakes, that's what will happen, and people will complain. And so, I think there is a responsibility there to do the best you can, and nothing will be perfect, but create a balanced schedule where this one might give you a nice Cox throwing a frog and then somebody else on a ledge. And that's a really cool thing to see.
Mark, you were talking about earlier about, you're putting 2025 schedule together. How has that come along for you? I mean, this is you're getting ready to go into your second year as a tournament director. And, what did you learn from year one?
Everybody's calling me, hey, what's your schedule? We need to know these dates before we sign up. I'm like, okay, well, I'm working on it. And I go, you guys don't understand how it is to make a schedule, a tournament. Because I have to go around all the other large pro-ams because we don't want to have one on top of each other. Because otherwise we have the same anglers. We're fighting for the same anglers. And that's not right. And we need to go to lakes at a good time. We also have to work with communities.
That's big.
So Boardman, Oregon, for one, right? I had these dates set. And we sent them to the chamber. First I sent them to the parks guy. And parks guy's like, oh, yeah, those are great. Perfect. He wrote them down. Okay, we're all set. We sent the date to the chamber, and the chamber goes, oh, no, we can't do those dates. So we go, okay, all right. Well, so we moved the dates like 3 or 4 weeks, right? Because I have back-to-back tournaments there. So move the dates back, and we send them out again, and the parks guy goes, he says, that won't work. We have a walleye tournament there every year on that date.
Wow.
Okay, now what do we do? So now I have to move that date again. And then I got another one that was, I have one date that's right next to another large tournament. It was like a week away, and guys were like, hey, we want to fish yours and theirs. So now we have to choose. So which one do we fish? Well, you fish mine, but I can't be that way. I go, okay, well, let me see what I can do. So I worked with Fish and Wildlife. It's not Game and Fish here. It's Fish and Wildlife because they wanted to change it to that. California, I don't know if it's that way everywhere, but that's the way it is here. So, and I was able to move that date to a different date and kind of spread it out. So that made those guys happy. But it's, they all want the dates. Well, it's July and we're working on next year's dates. So
you're doing better than we did.
It's a progression until you get them all right. Because, we have 10 different circuits out here, all fighting for the best date. And, and I want 3 days. Some of them want 1 day. And then if there's a whole bunch of 1 day ones, and then they take up the whole weekend. So, it's just it's an arduous task coming up with all these dates and getting the good lakes of the good time and not being on top of anybody else.
When you're speaking of the good times, here in the East Coast, it's usually we go south for the winter and we work our way up the continent. The West Coast climate is so unique. How does that work for you? Do you guys start, closer down south and work up? Like, how does that work there to hit the prime times?
So in the northern part of the lake, like state, like Lake Shasta, is a really good bite in January. So we're going there in January.
That's so crazy.
And then, they're spotted bass. So they bite, they bite really good when it's cold.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can catch 50, 100 bass a day, even on a bad time there. And then we move to, we're going down to Maloney's in March, which is going to be a really good lake then. Then you get March, April, Clear Lake is really good. Clear Lake's usually not so good in January, because they're Florida strain largemouth. They don't like it when it's that cold. So, and then in California, June 15th to September 15th, we cut to a 6-hour tournament. The state thinks that that's going to save more fish. Whether it does or not, they think it does. So they cut it when we have no choice. So now we go up to Oregon, Washington for those times, and then we can fish for 8 or 10 hours during that time. So June 15th to September 15th, we move up there. Then in the fall, September 15th on, we move back down here. So we'll go to the Delta, Clear Lake, Don Pedro, those kind of places. So those are the times I try to get, try to hit the best lakes at the best time.
Dude, that is so stressful. I don't know how you're not on Zoloft or something to try to figure out all of that. It's just insane. Wow.
I got a little bit of help. I talk with a few guys that help me, and they, and we talk about, okay, well, you should be 3 weeks from your date, and then 3 weeks from their date, and then, okay, we should probably go to this lake, and this community will help us out. This community we don't know. This community helps out. So the way I run events is way more expensive. It's not a scale and a table and a spreadsheet and a cash box. I bring 2 wrapped boats and trucks. I have a wrapped truck, a big giant wrapped trailer, a release boat, and another wrapped truck that hauls that. So when I come to town, it's all a whole big circus. So I need community help to help me afford to bring all this stuff to town, to put on a good show, put on a good event. So, and saying that, we need these communities to help work with us so we can bring this show to town and do a good job for the anglers, do a good job for the community.
Because they all look at that because the magazine. The magazine's helped you. You've been in business for years with the Bass Angler magazine, and they know that their community, as well as the TV and the live and the YouTube and all that great stuff that you're offering as well, and the live weigh-ins are going to help promote their town and their community. But I want to get back to what you were talking about earlier about the 6-hour fish limit. How do they feel that really does help?
Well, because it's hot, the water's hot. They think fish in the live well over a certain period of time increases the mortality rate.
You're so dumb.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works.
But in California,
it's not that way in Texas. It's not that way in Florida. Not that way in Alabama. But California is a different state. We have a lot of liberal people that make a lot of decisions. Whether you're liberal or not, it's okay. But they, they make a lot of decisions that, maybe the fishermen aren't so keen on.
Yeah.
We have 4-hour tournaments here, and I'm actually sponsoring one now. We fish from 6 to 12, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so 6 hours. But, it's because it does get so daggone hot. And it's not really, we have had 0 fish die. So, so far it's been great, but it's just because it does get so hot and the anglers don't need to be out there. And it's on Smith Mountain Lake, which is a mega for boat traffic. And that's probably the main reason why we get off there at lunchtime, because all the pleasure boats come out, and then it's, you're fighting the wake.
Right.
Not the fish mortality, because like I said, we haven't had any fish die so far.
I don't know that. I imagine there's some studies out there. Florida would be the place. They do a lot of studies. The state of Florida does a lot of different things. So I'm actually going to work with them on a mortality rate. It's a post-tournament mortality rate. We're gonna talk to them about that and see. That's a hard one because you have to tag the fish or have some sort of transmitter or some way to find out if these fish are dying after an event. So I don't know what that is. So hopefully we'll find out.
Yeah, I've reached out to Florida to talk to them about that, because I've talked to people in the DWR in Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Texas. And to me, it's interesting that the data is only coming out of one state. And therefore, I don't know how much you should actually take that data correctly when it's like, if you're only sampling one town in the nation and saying like, statistically, this is what happens if you're like this, but you're only sampling one specific set of humans in one specific town. So if you're saying water temperature, it's Florida. So example is SAV studies, they only come out of Florida. So of course, in a lake that's only 3 feet deep, you're going to say SAV is bad. But if you are up at Lake Cayuga where it's 6,000 feet deep, that's completely different. Not again, I really get nerdy with this stuff, but it's like, I'm not saying you should completely discount it, but should it affect a little bit when Clear Lake or a canyon reservoir like Lake Havasu or Powell, that's not a Floridian Toho. There needs to be an asterisk, I think, or something like that with some data points there.
Right.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot.
Arizona doesn't have that rule. And, you know, you go to Havasu in the summertime or Lake Mead, it's 120 degrees.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, if they're going to have a 6-hour rule, it should be there versus, you know, some of the lakes in California, especially the Delta is a tidal waterway, and the water really never gets over 75, 77 degrees.
And it comes down to the anglers, honestly. We have John boat tournaments here at Occoquan Reservoir, and they've had 2 fish killed in 5 years. And they're dealing with massive coolers that they're not a split live well, they're coolers that have to be iced. And the park says if we see so many dead fish, you will not be allowed to have a tournament anymore, period. So they go to the nth degree to make sure these fish stay healthy, and you see a decrease in fish mortality. And so I would love to see a study done where you just studied professional anglers, AAA, and then lower, and then to see like how much of it is just the angler's respect for the resource. Because I'm pretty sure an elite angler or anglers in your position in your tour, that a 1 ounce will kill you. So you really don't want to see that dead fish penalty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of our lakes, you know, the fishing, the weights are so tight that, you know, 1 dead fish, 2 ounces or a quarter of a pound is going to make a big deal.
One thing I've always wanted to ask you was about the water issue crisis out there, especially in like Colorado River Chain, Powell, Havasu. How has that been in recent years with, you had an El Nino year last year, if I'm not mistaken. Has that helped the fishing, hurt the fishing? Where's that at?
You know, I haven't fished Lake Mead much, but I heard it's fishing very well. The water's come up quite a bit there. You know, if you saw the videos about the barrels and the bodies and the cars they find there, you know, Lake Mead was really, really low. So, and now it's come up significantly since then, but I think that's probably still down 100 feet from full.
Wow.
That's insane.
And, you know, what happens is that Lake Mead is a power generating lake. So in order to generate power for all the places, you know, that they have it, they need it there at Lake Mead, and then they sell it downstream to, you know, other places. They're letting a lot of water out to generate all this power. So I don't know if it's ever going to come up unless we have a bunch of El Nino years. So the rest of the lakes in California are up pretty well.
That's good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we've had 2 good rainy years. Hopefully it'll rain again good again this year, because a couple of years ago, all the lakes were really, really low. You could barely launch at Clear Lake, and all the other lakes were down, you know, 100, 150, 200 feet.
But you guys got a lot of snow as well, too. So
we did.
Yep.
Above you. Last 2 years, it was good.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll give you a couple of good spawning classes, too, to really repopulate those lakes.
Sure. Yeah. Clear Lake should be really good because Clear Lake is flooded. And, you know, we had several low years where we grew a lot of vegetation, you know, a lot of tules, a lot of things. Now the water's come way up, and all those fish are way, way back in there where you can't even get to them. So, and that lake, I think they grow pretty quick. They probably grow, you know, 1.5 pounds a year. So a couple of years, that'll be an amazing fishery.
Be some tanks.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Mark, Bass Angler Magazine, what's in the future, brother? What's coming, man? I mean, I know, like I said, you're working on year number 2 of the tournament series. And did you ever really think it would take up, even with the help, it would take up this much of your time? And then you got to devote the time to the magazine, because it is a quarterly magazine, but, you know, it's packed. I mean, it's jam-packed full of information each and every month. What's the future looking like, Mark?
I think it's good. You know, I don't think print's dead.
No,
you know, it's like a lot of the anglers are like, yeah, we don't care until they see their picture in there. They're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Because you can't lay your phone on your coffee table and look at your picture in the magazine, right? I mean, you can page through your phone and see the digital issue, but it's not. Sorry, man. It's been a crazy day. Yeah, I mean, so you can't physically, touch an iPad or a computer and see. It's cool to see a picture in there, but for me, that's just another internet page that has it on there. A magazine, having a physical magazine in your hand and looking through the pictures is different.
You can shrink wrap that thing, boys and girls, put it in a magazine bag, keep that thing for life, man. So I mean, in the internet, it'll be gone within minutes.
Yeah,
because something else has done come along. So I mean, it's a keepsake on top of that. And I ain't gonna lie, my cousin, he collected Fangora magazines back in the day, and all of it, we all did. I mean, everybody collected some type of magazine back in the day because it was cool, and put them in magazine bags, and we saved them and went back and read them later. And I mean, it's print's not dead, and I don't foresee it ever moving away. To be honest, I think it's
I don't
here to
think,
stay.
not a niche category like bass fishing or golf
Yeah.
or, so like a niche, a niche. If you're talking about news, I mean, like Newsweek or a news type magazine, I think you get that on the internet. And I think a magazine is not as valuable in that space as it is with a niche magazine where you're looking at it, where you're seeing yourself and you're learning things about fishing. And, I think it's just a different market. I think the niche market is good and it's going to stay for a while.
Are you working on the fall issue right now?
I am. Fall issue is done.
Okay.
It's going to press tomorrow.
Any
actually.
cool stories we can look forward to in there?
We have Colby. Colby wrote a story about catching big smallmouth. So yeah, we have. I don't know. Let me pull up my.
Oh,
sheet.
he's got it. He's got it real quick.
Yeah.
But guys, like I said, don't forget Bass Angler Magazine. You can find it at your local newsstand. Mine, Barnes and Nobles carries it, and there's about a Barnes and Nobles right now in about
Almost
every
everywhere.
location throughout the United States. So you can pick up a copy there today, or you can just go online to Bass Angler Magazine and subscribe and become a member and receive issues there. And like I said earlier, it is a quarterly magazine, 4 issues a year, but it's not little, guys. It's jam-packed full of information from the pros, a lot of Major League Fishing interviews, and a lot of great writers. So definitely please make sure you check that out. And also follow them online because if you love bass fishing and want to keep up with what's happening on the West Coast, I haven't been able to watch as much because there's a couple hours behind us. And by the time you go on live, I'm practically going to bed. But
Yeah.
we
stream it on YouTube. You can always go back and look at it later.
Yep.
There
So
you go.
they're streaming all the lives, and I've seen Mark out there on the water from the boat and talking to anglers and all that good stuff. So they covered extremely well, and like you said earlier, they got a beautiful wrap trailer. I mean, it's popping, if you know what I'm saying.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I have 2 of those trailers, and I dropped off the other one yesterday to get wrapped. So I have both of them and figuring out. I need to have a redundant trailer. I mean,
Yeah.
because without the trailer, I'm out of business. So now I have 2 of them, and just in case, God help us, anything happens to it. But if something does, I have another one. So in this next issue, we have there's 24 stories in the magazine, 100 pages, 25 ads in there. So we have 75 pages of content, which is more than any other magazine out there. So we have an article about the donkey slayer. You guys know what that is?
Mm-mm.
You don't. It's a chatterbait. It's pretty cool. It's like a $50 chatterbait story about that.
Wow.
How weather affects giant bass, understanding smallmouth, fall smallmouth, lessons learned from forward-facing sonar. A guy called me and did a story with me on that one, so I'm in there.
That's cool.
Flipping with Fletcher, Tie Rock, cracking with Brandon Card, understanding bridge bass or bluff bass. Locating offshore bass with forward-facing sonar. That's something different. So I'll tell you, we were at the Columbia River, and it used to be you would fish breaks and points and weed line edges and things like that. Well, guys were out way off the bank in like a flat that was 20 foot of water, fishing like 5 foot deep for smallmouth in the current. And you would never think there would be a bass out there. You'd go, no, those are, salmon or something swimming out there. No, but there's bass out there. It's pretty cool. So we have our tournament takeaways from Almanor and the Delta. How to pattern fish, chasing bait in a kayak, how to win a tournament in a kayak, the hover rig. So you guys like that? Another FFS one. How and when to fish finesse jerk baits. So the new little jerk baits, it's come out of Japan. We've adopted here in California, and maybe one day back east, you guys will use them.
Golly.
Too late. I'm already there. I'm already there.
California, we use swim baits that are this big, and then jerk baits that are this big. I don't know. And you go down south, and they look at a swim bait this big, and they go, "Oh my God, I can't throw that." And you throw swim baits that are 6-inch back there. 6-inch swim baits for us are small. Yeah. So funny how that is. We have chasing bass with Bob Azumi. You know who he is? He's like the Bill Dance of Canada. Efficiency on the water with Josh Bertrand. Let's see. How I won a tournament with Jake Lawrence. Fall top water. And staying on top with Ish Monroe. So Ish fishes both of our tours here. Plus he goes back and fishes bass, fishes a lot of stuff. And Ish comes out here and he does second in 2 of our tournaments, and then a couple more top 10s out of like 7 tournaments. I think he has like 5 top 10s. I'm like,
oh wow, it's good.
And he will be back east. He'll fly out here and then he'll make a top 10. And then I look, he fished another tournament at Clear Lake, and he's like second, and he's like third, fifth, wins that one. I'm like, holy crap! I said, Ish, how are you doing this? So I got one of my writers. I said, I want you to do a story with Ish. How does he stay on top of these fish going from New York to Oregon to Clear Lake to Lake Shasta? How do you stay on top of these fish? I mean, oh my God, how do you do that? So we have a story with him of like, how is he staying on top of this? I just, I was amazed. He made a top 10 in Columbia River in the last tournament after he just came back. I think it was lacrosse. He caught 24 pounds of largemouth on a frog on day 1. And he was top 5. And next day those fish left and he sucked. But, but he was way up there. I was like, all right, Ish, you're living up to your story. Good job. And then he comes out here and makes a top 10 on the Columbia River, which is, 100 times different than frog fishing for largemouth in New York.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So pretty, we work at cool stuff, trying to stay and bring cool stuff with every new issue. You don't find like the old rehashed. I don't take stories that somebody else did and rewrite them. All the stories are fresh and new. We come up with something new and different every single issue. So
Mark, man. Mark, we're pretty.
Go to bassanglermag.com, little subscribe button, sign up, get the magazine delivered to your doorstep. You get all kinds of cool info.
All right, guys, there you go. You heard from Mark. Don't forget, subscribe, sign up, like you said. You guys have a podcast show now. I know you've been doing some of that. You got a newsletter that you can be a part of as well. So please get registered, get signed up, and subscribe. Like I said, you can be a part of the magazine because the magazine is really, really good. Guys, man, what a great show we had tonight. We appreciate, Mark, you coming on and talking with us and getting a little insight about what's happening out there in the wild. I don't want to say Wild West because that's what we had before, but the new
Wild West is gone. Now we have the BAM Trail.
The new BAM Trail. And guys, it's growing, and please become a part of it. And like I said, make sure you follow it. And like you said, the new series, $2,500 entry, $50,000 payout to the winner. And you're not going to find that.
4 different events. championship's going to pay back like 150%.
Good gosh.
Wow.
So
So
guys,
cool. I mean, there's guys looking at it, Cody Marr, Bryant Smith, Yishman
wow.
Robb, Luke Clausen, talked to him, Brett Height, a lot of guys. Brent Erler, talked to a lot of those guys about, they're interested. We just have to make sure the schedules mesh. It's hard for those guys that have now made a home back east and fishing back there entrenched to come back here. A lot of them need to have 2 boats. Fred Urbana said he's going to try to sign up and fish. So we'll see what happens.
Because if you're not fishing, you're not cashing checks, and the more tournaments you can fish, the more sponsors love you, and the more sponsors you get, and it's kind of hard to push that, but that's what it's all about in the world of tournament bass fishing. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. All right, guys, really appreciate Mark coming on and talking with us tonight. Thomas, man, you had some great questions, dude. You were more prepared than the rest of us, I think, tonight. I ain't gonna lie, because it's a different world out there in California. And I know earlier we were talking about Thomas and, the changes that he's going through and they're trying to work through up there. But I wanted to bring this up, and I didn't, I want to get the show going, but a tournament director locally here told me the other day that he has it's like a little small tournament series. He's got a lot of them, but there's one that had like 15 boats, and they raised the fee to $100. And then this year, they decide to add an additional $200 per tournament. So they're charging on this one body of water. It's just this one location, guys. So it's just, this one location, $300 a tournament to host one.
Wow.
It's interesting because depending on the lake that you're talking about, like Occoquan, places like this, where you have 4 or 5 big colleges that use it for road team. And I'm just going to say this now. If you want your daughter or son to pick a sport, don't do that, because you don't want them to be bullied. And I don't know many people that decided that row was the thing to do. Do esports or something else, for the love of God. But I have never met a single person that's like, I want to be a rower. And that was a smart decision. But a lot of those people have money, and they do put the screws on it to get boats out of there. And the biggest pessimistic statement I've made on my channel for the longest time is I think Lake Anna will be closed to the public in 10 years as that place gets more and more expensive. The average cost of a house is $2 to $3 million. There's a golf course coming in with a private airport.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it could easily get to the point where, unless you're a trust fund baby, you're not allowed on there. And they will put the screws to bass fishermen. So we need to speak up and talk about this stuff. And this is why I think it's a good thing that the BPT is coming to Smith. You want to keep places in the zeitgeist of bass fishing. You have to, because awareness keeps it alive. And if you keep these places and no one talks about it, it's easy for homeowner association, all these other people to come in there and just slurp it up, and you lose access.
Yep, I agree.
So guys, write your congressman, write your governor, or write anybody else that you can think of and tell them, please protect our bodies of water, but at the same time, keep them available for fisheries.
I'll give you one more point here, because this I didn't have to sign a contract for how state government works. The Department of Natural Resources in your state doesn't just do fishing. They fix bike trails. They fix parks. And the money that they use to do that is from fishing and hunting licenses.
No way, dude.
Yes. So it's not just boat ramps. So you need to understand that how the bread gets buttered here, you need to flex and tell them, I'm paying for this, and tell them what you want to have happen, because the money doesn't just go to fishing. It really needs to get out there.
That's freaking crazy. All right, guys, that's going to be tonight's show. Don't forget Grove Street Radio. That's where you guys can listen as well. The American Angler Outdoors. You can listen there. But there's a lot of great places you can listen to Basscast Radio, as well as all your podcast networks. And don't forget YouTube as well. So please head on over. Please subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to all of our channels, guys. Like I said, Fishing the DMV. Check out Thomas there. A lot of great shows each and every week. Bass Geek's pumping out the videos and the tutorials. And so let's be a part of it and help each other grow, because that's how this bad boy works. Have a great week, everyone. And we're going to be right back next Wednesday with another great show and another great guest. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll be talking to you later.
Bye.